While reading the Harry Potter books, you'll notice that J.K. Rowling, like any good author, allows some things to go unexplained, or at the very least, underexplained. This allows there to be discussion and mystery around certain things in the series that fans can later debate and discuss, which allows there to be even more avid attention paid to that which is unwritten in some ways than that which is written. Any good author does this. God did this with the Bible, and theologians are still trying to figure out stuff about it 2,000 years later. One aspect of the Harry Potter books that I always thought was underexplained was the story of Regulus Black. I know Creature gives a pretty detailed story of how he died, but I mean a proper explanation of why Regulus was willing to die. And today, I think I've figured out that answer.
Hallows and Horcruxes.
So, to give us a bit of a recap of Regulus, Sirius first mentions him to Harry in the beginning of Book 5 when they are looking at Sirius's family tree. But it isn't until Book 7 that we really learn much about Regulus. At the end of Book 6, Harry and Dumbledore steal a locket from Voldemort's cave, only for Harry to realize later that it isn't the actual locket of Slytherins they are looking for. The real locket looks something like this. The fake locket has a note in it which reads, "To the Dark Lord. I know I will be dead long before you read this, but I want you to know that it was I who discovered your secret. I have stolen the real Horcrux and intend to destroy it as soon as I can. I face death in the hope that when you meet your match, you will be mortal once more. R.A.B." So Harry, Ron, and Hermione have to try and figure out who R.A.B. is during the first part of book number 7. In the chapter Creature's Tale, while the three of them are staying at Grimmauld Place, Harry realizes that R.A.B. is none other than Sirius's younger brother, Regulus Arcturus Black. After searching the house and realizing that they had each handled the locket when they had been cleaning the house 2 years prior, Harry summons Creature to try and discover what happened to the locket and find out if Creature had stolen it back. As the title to the chapter implies, Creature tells them the story of how Regulus got the locket and what happened to it. He starts off by telling them about Regulus and that he was the favorite son of his mistress. Indeed, as Sirius told Harry in Book 5, "My parents, with their pure-blood mania, convinced that to be a Black made you practically royal, my idiot brother soft enough to believe them?" Hashtag royally attained bloodline. Creature then continues his story about how Regulus joined the Death Eaters at age 16. A year after joining, Regulus came down to Creature and said that he had volunteered Creature to help the Dark Lord with something. He then tells how Voldemort took Creature with him into the cave by the sea, across the lake, and onto the island. And then how Voldemort had made Creature drink the potion until the basin was empty. Voldemort then put in his locket into the basin and filled it with more potion, and then left Creature alone on the island to die. And that is why you don't volunteer your house elf to help out the most evil wizard of all time. Creature goes to the water's edge and drinks, and then the Inferi pull him under the water, which in the world of Harry Potter would be completely terrifying, considering that something similar to a zombie is drowning you. Hashtag R8 brains. Hashtag warm bodies. Harry can't figure out how Creature escaped. Creature simply tells him that it was because Master Regulus told him to come back. Harry momentarily insists that you can't apparate inside of that cave, but then Ron reminds him that house elf magic is different than wizard magic, that they can apparate inside of Hogwarts Castle even when people can't. Hermione points out that Voldemort would have considered house elves and their magic well beneath his notice, and would never have thought that house elves would have magic that humans didn't. Hashtag Riddle's abominable blunder. So Creature comes home and tells Regulus what happened. Regulus apparently has a change of heart and decides that because Voldemort tried to murder his house elf, that he is going to fight him. Hashtag really awesome brother. So Regulus has Creature come with him and show him where the cave is, in a valiant attempt to steal Voldemort's Horcrux and destroy it. Hashtag rebellion against black magic. See what I did there? Black magic. So Regulus goes with Creature into the cave and onto the island, where he tells Creature to watch as he drinks the potion, to swap the lockets once the basin is empty, and leave without him, but not before giving him an order to destroy the first locket. Hashtag resurrection ability banished. and then to never tell anyone in his family what had happened to him. So Kreacher is forced to watch as his beloved Master Regulus is drowned beneath the water by the Inferi. And then he goes home. Hashtag relic amazingly brought back. Kreacher tries to destroy the locket, but can't. And so it sits in the black house in the cupboard until Mundungus Fletcher steals it in Book 6. So Harry asks Kreacher to go and get Mundungus Fletcher and bring him back to Grimmauld Place. Harry, to try and win the elf's trust and cooperation, gives Kreacher the fake Horcrux that Regulus had swapped in the cave originally. Hashtag relic altruistically bestowed. After that, Kreacher becomes on much better terms with the three of them. He brings back Mundungus for them, they find out where the locket is, and Kreacher starts to take care of them and cook for them. To the point where a couple chapters later, Ron says, "Bless him, and when you think I used to fantasize about cutting off his head and sticking it on the wall." Hashtag rigor mortis against Bannister. But there is one thing in the story that is never fully explained. Why Regulus allowed himself to die as opposed to escaping the cave. Hermione suggests to Harry that Regulus was trying to keep his family safe from Voldemort, but honestly, I don't think that explanation holds much water. No pun intended. Because we know that there were actually at least two ways that Regulus could have escaped the cave alive. The first way is that he could have drunk the potion himself, just as he did, and then drunk from the lake, just as he did, except instead he could have had Kreacher dive in the water after him, grab onto him, and apparate them both out. Or second, he could have done what Voldemort did. Make Kreacher drink the potion, take the locket himself, escape on the boat, while giving Kreacher orders to escape the Inferi, just like he did before, and then once he, Regulus, had escaped the cave the normal way, then he would have disapparated back home as well. And we know that the first way, in addition to being kinder, would have also been possible. And the reason we know this is because of how Harry and friends escaped the Malfoy Manor. Dumbledore mentions to Harry in Book 6 that many wizard dwellings are enchanted so that you can't apparate inside them. However, rarely is one enchanted so house elves can't. The Malfoy Manor is one of these. So is Voldemort's cave, we learn. We know this about the Malfoy Manor because when Snape and Yaxley appear in the first chapter of Book 7, they appear outside the gates of the Malfoy Manor. They can't get in through the enchanted front gates unless they have the Dark Mark. Greyback and friends encounter this protection later in the book. However, Harry is able to escape the Malfoy Manor because he and those he is with grab hold of Dobby, and Dobby's magic encompasses them all. So why, with these two options of how to stay alive, would Regulus think it was the best option for him to die? And I think the answer to that lies in what mission he was trying to accomplish. He wanted to destroy the locket. If he was alive, then naturally it would follow that at some point in coming months, he would have to meet with Voldemort and his Death Eaters in a meeting. He was a young Death Eater, not unlike Barty Crouch. Regulus was born in 1961, whereas Barty Crouch was born the next year, and Snape was born just the year prior in 1960. So we know that Voldemort was open to having many young recruits among the Death Eaters. However, out of all of them that were that young, Snape seems to be the only one that had mastered occlumency well enough to be able to effectively lie to Lord Voldemort. And if Regulus was 17 to 18 when he died, then it stands to reason that he was not a skilled occlumens, and hadn't studied that branch of magic very much. Considering Voldemort probably met with at least some of his Death Eaters on a fairly regular basis, then odds are he would expect to have Regulus at a meeting sometime within a few months after he stole the locket. And if that were the case, I doubt that Regulus could keep his treachery from Voldemort and prevent him from discovering it. Voldemort, upon sensing some betrayal from Regulus, would undoubtedly have tried to access his memories the same way that he did to Grigorovich in Book 7. And not only would he discover that Kreacher was alive, but he would also discover that Regulus had stolen the locket. Regulus would likely be killed, as would his whole family. And then Voldemort would just hide the locket again. But I know what some of you are thinking. You're thinking, why couldn't Regulus have just gone on the run with Kreacher? Why couldn't he have done what Igor Karkaroff did for a year and tried to escape Voldemort? And that is because I think he knew that Voldemort would eventually catch up to him. Hard to focus your energies on destroying an enchanted locket if you're on the run for your life constantly. Indeed, it took Harry and friends in that very situation several months to destroy it, and they even knew how to destroy a Horcrux at the time. Regulus apparently didn't know how to destroy it, since he assumed that Kreacher would be able to do it himself. Perhaps he thought that Voldemort's blunder in being outdone by house elf magic would be present on the magic Voldemort put on the locket as well. Maybe he thought that Kreacher would have some of his own magic that could ultimately destroy the Horcrux, and that if he was simply dead and disappeared, that it would give Kreacher the most time to destroy it. Indeed, Voldemort thinking Kreacher was dead, and also thinking Regulus was dead, assuming that he had ever stopped by the Black's house to question Mrs. Black about her son's whereabouts, would probably have never bothered to trouble their family with his presence again. So I think that Hermione is partly correct, that Regulus dying kept his family safe from Voldemort, but I also think he died to give the locket the best chance of being destroyed. At this point, I want to discuss something that Sirius said about Regulus that he mentions to Harry in Book 5 when they're looking at Sirius's family tree. And that is why his family would think that Voldemort had killed him or had ordered him to be killed. Mrs. Black apparently just thought her son had gone missing, and according to Kreacher, was mad with worry. So how did Sirius, apparently prior to getting sent to Azkaban, get this mistaken idea that Voldemort had had his younger brother killed? I think after a couple months of Regulus being absent, that Voldemort would have gone looking for him and would have stopped by the Black House. He probably would have been concerned that something might have happened to him. And after stopping by the Black House, he would have gotten the impression very quickly from Mrs. Black that she had no idea where her son was. Indeed, the first words out of her mouth, probably when Voldemort knocked on the door, were, "Do you know where Regulus is?" Voldemort would get as much information out of her as he could, and then leave, apparently thinking that Regulus had essentially just dropped off the face of the earth. I think it was a few months later that Voldemort decided to invent the story of him killing Regulus Black, and then had that story leaked to the Black family, just to instill more fear in the wizarding world. Essentially, if you leave me, even out of fear, then I will punish you most severely. When in reality, Voldemort never knew what had become of Regulus. A final point I wish to discuss in this theory is in Regulus's letter to Voldemort. How did he know that the locket was a Horcrux? All Regulus really had to go on was Kreacher's story that he was told after the events in the cave. All Kreacher saw was Voldemort putting a locket in the basin, so apparently somehow Regulus deduced, just from that description, that the locket was a Horcrux. Kreacher explains that Regulus told him to stay in his cupboard, and was apparently away for a few weeks. It is during this time that Regulus determines the locket is a Horcrux. We know Regulus had been obsessed with the dark arts and was a fan of the Death Eaters a few years before signing up. He was in Slytherin, so obviously he must have been doing research and had figured out that the locket was a Horcrux based on the fact that it was an object that Voldemort was trying to keep safe and hidden. No book at Hogwarts could have told him about Horcruxes, since Dumbledore was the headmaster at that time, and he had confiscated all of the books that talked about them. So he either had a book at home that explained Horcruxes, and considering his ancestry and the Black House, that's certainly a possibility, or he got a book about them from a dark art shop like Borgin & Burke's. That is assuming he didn't already know what they were, which I am inclined to think that he learned about them during the few-week interval after Kreacher escaped from the cave. Now, in terms of his letter to Voldemort, I don't think we really have enough information in it to determine whether Regulus suspected that Voldemort had multiple Horcruxes. He knew about the one, perhaps he suspected there were others, but honestly we just don't know. But one line from the letter is important to analyze. I face death in the hope that when you meet your match, you will be mortal once more. When you meet your match. Does this mean that Regulus knew about Harry's existence and was referring to him? And to figure that out, we need to figure out when Regulus died. He died apparently sometime in the year 1979. Probably in the latter half of the year, if not close to the end of the year, considering what the tapestry says that we read in Book 5. 15 years prior to August of 1995, although, to be fair, that date is probably a little off and isn't precisely correct, considering that the date on the tapestry is going from when the Blacks suspected he was dead, which would be Voldemort leaking the story. And so essentially, the date given on the tapestry is probably a few months later than his actual death. All in all, we don't have an exact date. But considering that Trelawney gave the prophecy to Dumbledore sometime in the autumn of 1979, there is actually the possibility that Regulus could have been told the contents of that prophecy prior to his death in a meeting with Voldemort. Would Voldemort have told his Death Eaters about the prophecy? Well, we know that Malfoy and company at the end of Book 5 knew about the prophecy, and they at least knew what Snape had told Voldemort. So I'm thinking that Voldemort discussed it with them, at least to some extent, and now told them that they had a mission to complete, that being kill Harry Potter. So I think that in the months before Regulus died, Voldemort probably did discuss the prophecy with his Death Eaters. And that's probably why we see Regulus mentioning Voldemort being his match in the letter that he writes to him. Do you agree with this theory? Do you think that Regulus died to ensure that the Horcrux would never fall back into Voldemort's hands? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Also in the comment section, leave any related phrases that you can think of that RAB can stand for. Well, that's all for me today, guys. Be sure to like this video and subscribe, and share it with all of your Harry Potter friends, and I will see you in another video.